Okay, so again, we're getting some really interesting questions around that choice to be using palm kernel now. So we've come off the back of the surplus. There was a paddock I showed you last time, so it's still only that long. So just getting on to 2700 and due to graze in the next day or so. And that's the longest grass we've got on the farm. So we are holding our around 37 days is convenient. So we would be in the 30 to 35 day kind of window. We're a little bit longer than that, but grass growth's dropping pretty quick. But just wanted to have a quick look at the feed budget and try and help people understand what that decision shape is looking like. So this is our feed budget. So for those who haven't seen Farmex before, you kind of got all your feeds there. It's hard to read. That one there is palm kernel, so it looks black. It's actually dark brown. And down there is what we call our board-in silage. So we've got board-in silage, we've got board-in silage, we've got board-in silage, we've got board-in grazing off the runoff, which you've seen me talk about, and board-in hay. We keep everything really separate so that we can report really accurately to you guys what was bought on farm versus off farm, made on farm versus bought off farm. In reality, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of silage, 2 different types of hay. So in reality, cows are either getting silage or they're not, whether it's bought in or not bought in. It's silage out of the stack, right? Anyway, so that's kind of the spring diet. So there's a bit of palm kernel, some silage. That orange piece is that little bit of grazing off the runoff. So we whipped over and grazed the annuals for 2 feeds with the cows. So yes, I put that in our feed budget. Track that through. This is all grass, so all grass, all grass. And this is out the autumn. So we're starting through here grazing. This is our brassicas. Down here we've got a tiny little bit of our sorghum. So we've got that little wee paddock of sorghum you've seen in there. We grazed some of the... we're planning to graze the runoff again, so that's popped up in there. There's the palm kernel and there's the silage, and then there is the grass allocation to cows. So you can see that green band gets pretty small, and down here is the numbers. So in January on average 12 kilos of grass, in February it's 8, in March it's 9.5, April's 9.5, and May not very much. So then we've got silage, so we've got silage here plus, yep, I know, really confusing. Silage down here, which is our board-in silage. It's all in the same stack, so I'm just feeding them both out. So we're sitting around 4 kilos of silage in February, and then underneath in here we've got the palm kernel line tracking, right? So if we do this, if I click on this line, this tells me that we're going to close with 73 tonnes of high quality pasture silage on hand. So we want about 45 tonnes for next spring is what's in our feed budget. Plus that gives us 30 tonnes spare up our sleeves to carry through ahead as a backup. And then the only other thing we've got left is, let me click on the right line, 30 tonnes there of dry cow silage. So that's what we've got on hand. So we've got about 100 tonnes of silage rolling into next season, which is for dry cow silage, obviously for winter. And then we've got 40 tonnes of milking silage and 30 tonnes spare. And pretty much that's all we've got left in the budget. In terms of production, that means in January we're hoping to do 1.5 a cow, Feb 1.3, March 1.25, April 1.14, and May 1.09. In terms of stock numbers, culls and deaths and bits and pieces will drop 20 culls mid-Feb, drop 17 mid-March, drop 17 mid-April. That's all of our culls gone, and drying off starts down here. If we have a look at the detail, 16th of April we're drying off some, a bunch more at the end of April, and then the last of them run through until the 10th of May. So that's kind of what the season looks like. Right, so I've done a second budget. Let's take the palm kernel out of the back end of the season and have a look at it. So I haven't changed those cull numbers yet, but we can do that. Have a look at the performance, and literally all I've done is drop the palm kernel, so there's nothing being fed in that line anymore. Grass allocations remain the same because I'm trying to close with 2400 pasture cover. So that's what we started with, 2420. We want to close roughly the same. If I drop that palm kernel, this is what happens to milk production. So January becomes 1.39, Feb 102, March 0.94, April 0.81, and May 0.74. It's not really particularly ambitious milk, but I've left it like that so you can see. So my grass allocation can't be any bigger than what it is now, or I'm not going to meet my closing target of cover. So if I feed any more grass between now and May, unless we have different growth to what's budgeted, so 51 in January, we know we'll average that. February 27, normal. March, April, May, that's kind of what we grow. So we can't afford to feed any more grass. So the only thing we can do is dry off earlier, and it'll kind of all add up to the same thing in terms of lost milk. So if at the moment I've got all cows milking and they're not making very much, and our body condition score is not particularly fantastic, the alternative is we dry cows off earlier and cull earlier. It still adds up to reduced milk. So on exactly the same payout for both of these scenarios, the only adjustment is obviously the system won't feed that palm kernel price. The difference in profit is sitting somewhere about $52,000 at the moment. Actually, I will just fix one thing in there. This is how you do it. So supplements with palm kernel, I'm still buying palm kernel and not feeding it. So let's delete some palm kernel purchases to where we should be. Right, so let's go back and look at that again. So 26 grand less palm kernel bought. Our difference in profit is sitting at still sitting at around $26,000 reduction, but significantly down in milk production. So we end up in a situation where we're kind of 50 grand worse off for not feeding that palm kernel. Like, that's how much it's worth to us, because we've got a strategy that says we've got a low stocking rate, we're chasing per cow performance over a long lactation. So because we didn't make a snot load of milk per hectare pre-Christmas, harvesting all that feed and turning it into milk with a higher stocking rate, we need our cows milking in the autumn to recover the value. And so that's a system choice. There's profit in that system. We're seeing good results out of that system. Our profit's going to be up quite a bit on last year at a $6 payout, and so we're comfortable with that system, but you have to understand how those mechanics work. So for anyone asking why we're feeding PK at the moment, that's what happens if we don't feed it. To hit our closing cover targets, we drop a whole bunch of milk out of the back end of the season. Because we ran a low stocking rate through the spring, we need to make that milk in the back end of the season to cover the costs in the front. We've got the silage on hand to do it. The palm kernel is just an add-on. Now technically we don't need to feed our palm kernel because our cover's not in trouble and we could use silage in this early period through here. But we can't go and dump 5 or 6 kilos of palm kernel a cow into March, April or May if we needed it. So we're spreading it over a longer period of time at a smaller amount. Ideally, we're going to see better growth than we've anticipated, and therefore we will feed less palm kernel in April and May than is currently forecast in here. So hopefully that adds a bit more context for people.